Hello and welcome to Mad About Sports. Of course, we are here to bring you another video, and of course, with the transfer window of January coming to an end, we are here to review how the transfer window went for most of the teams. One could say this was the most accelerating January transfer window in many years. That's primarily because this transfer window happened right after a World Cup. And this transfer window happened after a mid-season break, which you usually don't see with European football. Now, what that has meant for a lot of teams is this has meant like for a lot of teams, they wanted to rebuild, actually reconstruct their teams from whatever they've been having earlier in the season, look forward to having a better finish to the latter half of the season. For example, Chelsea Football Club is a prime example of how they've been able to sign so many players after having a horror start in the Premier League. And on the flip side of things, Liverpool, despite having a horror start in the Premier League, have only managed to sign one major signing, which is Cody Gakpo. But here we're to talk about how the transfer window went for many of them. Let's start with Chelsea, as we already did mention about them. How are Chelsea able to spend 300 million in a specific transfer window? How are Chelsea able to spend so much of money? Is it against financial fair play? That's what we're going to be talking about. How Chelsea have been able to utilize a particular loophole which is there in the UEFA rules. Now, Chelsea have been handing out some long contracts to many of their players. Chelsea handed out an 8.5-year contract to Mikhailo Mudryk. Chelsea handed out almost a 6-year long contract as well to someone like Malo Gusto. And of course, for Enzo Fernandez as well, it's a very long contract. Now, what is Chelsea planning to do with handing out long contracts? There is a term called amortization. What Chelsea is planning to do is by handing out these long contracts, they're going to amortize the amount of money they'll have to pay at one go. When you have gotten someone like a Mikhailo Mudryk for 88 million, and when you have handed out an 8.5-year long contract, it's just going to cost Chelsea just over 10 million on the accounting books per year. So, what will that mean? There's a pro and a con to that. So for Chelsea, if they have to show it to the financial fair play of UEFA or to any accounting books of the Premier League, that will only mean that Chelsea only incurred 10 million. And now that means even for other players as well, they're only going to go in with a longer contract where they can divide the number of money, which means they would have only spent close to 80 million in a particular transfer window when you have cumulatively signed close to 10 players. And that means they've actually split the amount of money which they have to pay to a particular player at one go over a period of long period. Now, what has UEFA brought in? UEFA is planning to bring out a rule to curtail this kind of long contract and amortize the amount of money to pay within a span of 5 years. Now, that is something which UEFA understood that Chelsea have been able to make use of a particular loophole which has been already there in the rules. Now, UEFA is planning out to bring up a rule whereby you can only amortize for 5 years, and whatever contract you're handing out to a player, you'll have to amortize the amount of money within a span of 5 years. Now, that is where Todd Bowley has played very smart for them. And for Chelsea, there is a con to this as well. Now, for every transfer window now they go into the future with, they would have already spent 80 million. Now, that is a possibly a con which Chelsea wouldn't want to incur. And by handing out long contracts, that will also mean if a particular player is a failure, that will also mean Chelsea will have to keep on incurring the losses if that particular player is a failure over the next 6 to 7 years. Now, these are factors which Chelsea will definitely have to consider going forward. But definitely, Chelsea wanted to rebuild a complete squad after a horror start they've had. It's a new management, new coaching era, and Chelsea are definitely looking at youth prospects to come into the team to build one for the future for the next 8 to 10 years as well. And of course, Chelsea having going to play a Champions League knockout against Dortmund, they definitely want to go in deep into the Champions League. And if they're unable to qualify in the Premier League into the top four, at least win the Champions League and qualify into the top four. That's certainly something which Chelsea will consider as of now. Now let's talk about the Premier League toppers in Arsenal, of course. What did Arsenal do this particular transfer window? They signed Trossard from Brighton. Of course, Trossard was definitely one of the bright signings for Arsenal because he's had a very good season with Brighton. Brighton have been doing extremely well. Brighton did very good under Graham Potter, but the transition has been so smooth that even with the players of Trossard leaving, even Casiro was on the verge to move to Arsenal, but Brighton haven't really been shaken up. Even if you look last season, Kukurea was a major miss for them. Now, for example, McAllister for Brighton has been one of the mightiest prospects. That's one of the reasons why McAllister has been linked to many of these clubs as well. Now, does it ever change anything? But Trossard to Arsenal was definitely a backup option because Arsenal understanding that they're going to compete in all three competitions as of now, and of course, they'll be there to compete, and of course in the Europa League, which is now gotten even tougher for them because now with Europa League having Barcelona, Manchester United, Juventus, Europa League is not an easy run at all. They would definitely want to compete in Europe there, and of course, latter half of the season in the Premier League is always very interesting. Things can go haywire anytime. So of course, Arsenal wanted to sign Trossard, and alongside they've also gotten Jorginho. Jorginho from Chelsea was obviously a move which nobody anticipated coming because Caicedo was linked to Arsenal with 60 million move, and of course Brighton rejected that Caicedo deal because primarily they wanted more than what Arsenal offered them, and of course Brighton did not want to let go of someone like Caicedo at this point of stage as well because they already let go of so many of them prime players over the last one season, and now to let go of Caicedo in this important juncture in the season would mean very detrimental for a team like Brighton. Now, for Arsenal, Jorginho is definitely a backup option. Now, if you have to talk about the game which they played in the FA Cup against City as well, you saw that how without a player like Thomas Partey, Sambi Lokanga was unable to do a lot of defensive cover. They wanted a player with a lot of experience who's been there under pressure, doing a lot of work for the team. Because at the end of the day, Jorginho definitely has had a lot of a fair share of criticism over the years, especially when it comes to his progressive play, when it comes to his creative play for Chelsea, especially over the last one season. But having said that, if I have to take you back to 2021 Euros, which took place, him as a pivot for Italy was very crucial in that run which they had in the 2021 Euros, where Mancini really used him to the best of effects. And similarly, in an Arteta like system where you would want a pivot, even at times if Arsenal would want to go in with a 4-2-3-1 system where they would want to play a double pivot, Jorginho would ideally fit in with someone like a Thomas Partey. That'll give them, if even if all they would want to move into a defensive transition with five men in the back line, he is a perfect man to go in there. Though he lacks space, he lacks a lot of creativity. He could be a perfect cover shadow in front of the defensive line, and that's why an experience of Jorginho is possibly worth its weight in gold. And of course, at this point, a lot of Arsenal fans and even Chelsea fans aren't happy because a player has gone to the rival club, and Arsenal fans aren't happy because they expected someone like Caicedo to come into the team as well. But let's talk about another team, Manchester United. What did they do in this transfer window? Of course, one of the biggest signings or one of the last moment moves which they had was obviously of Marcel Sabitzer coming in from Bayern Munich. Now, this would mean Eriksen is definitely out for majority of this season, and of course, they wanted a player to create, even to play in a double pivot role with Casemiro, and if at all be someone who can play as a number 8, who can be extremely good in terms of creative play, someone who can press the ball well. Marcel Sabitzer fills a lot of boxes like this, and obviously they had to get in someone like a Marcel Sabitzer from Bayern Munich. One thing which Marcel Sabitzer faced in Bayern Munich is that obviously when you talk about a team like Bayern Munich, you have two midfielders who are in prime of their career in Goretzka and Kimmich, who have been doing a fantastic job for them, playing the double pivot system for Nagelsmann. Of course, Marcel Sabitzer as well wanted more minutes under his belt because he is coming from a club where he was a prime man in the midfield for RB Leipzig, and for him to come into a team like Bayern Munich, obviously it was a good move, but it did just not do the justification as to whether he was getting enough minutes under the belt. Even for Bayern Munich, they have a player like Ryan Gravenberch, who is not getting enough minutes under the belt. He has been a star boy for Bayern Munich. He's been a star boy for Ajax, and the moment he came to Bayern Munich, he's not getting enough minutes under the belt. That's why Ryan Gravenberch also was linked with Manchester United and also Liverpool for a loan move. Of course, Marcel Sabitzer is in a loan move, and it'll definitely mean that it's only going to bolster Manchester United's latter half of the season because they will be competing in the Europa League in a crucial contest against Barcelona, who are also in a very similar rebuild position like Manchester United at this point of stage. Now, let's talk about Bayern Munich, as we already did mention about them. What did they get? Bayern Munich obviously wanted a right back who could re-attack on the flanks. They had a Benjamin Pavard. Of course, we know what Benjamin Pavard is all about. He's defensively very solid, but they wanted a player who could possibly attack way more deeper into the wings, go into the final third, put those crosses in link up play on the right hand side with someone like maybe at times Sane plays on the right, even with someone like Mane, because Mane more often than not plays centrally once Mane is fit. And of course, they have a game against PSG, which means they'll have to deal with a lot of pacey wingers on the flanks as well. Now, what does that mean? Who they've gotten? They've gotten the likes of Joao Cancelo from City. Now, why did Joao Cancelo make this move? Of course, we have seen after the World Cup, even during the World Cup, you saw Joao Cancelo's defensive traits dropping down drastically. That really meant that for City, there was a couple of occasions where teams were able to attack City through the left hand region, and which means the opposition team's right hand flank. And that's where House Cancelo, who was starting as a left back for City, looked extremely vulnerable on defensive transition. And Pep started benching him. Of course, how Cancelo, being that established player he's been over the last one season, he did not take it well at all. So, which meant City having to go to someone like Nathan Ake, who does a defensive work pretty decently. Even attacking progressions, he's been doing a fair share of fair decent job as well. Now, on the right hand side, who did City fight? City found a gem in someone like a Rico Lewis. Rico Lewis, in the games he's come on for City, he's really done a very good job. So Pep has shown a lot of trust in this youngster, and to go with Nathan Ake, which really left someone like a Howe considered disappointed. And for him, he has moved to Bayern with an option to buy him at the end of his loan. And now he's moved in with a 6 month loan. Maybe at the end of the loan, there's an option for Bayern to buy him as well. Now, that is a difference. That's going to be a very important move. Similarly, when we talk about Bayern Munich, that's one of the major signing of the season. Of course, they've signed someone like a Leimer as well. Leimer will join them at the end of during the summer. So that's one primary signing for them during this January transfer window. Now let's talk about some of the European giants like Real Madrid. What did they do? They've been very quiet in the transfer window. That's primarily because of the fact that they are possibly saving up a lot of money to splurge in the summer. Now, of course, Real Madrid are also looking at a transitional phase, and one name which every fan or every Real Madrid fan want is Jude Bellingham from Liverpool. And of course, they would want to go for Bellingham in the summer, considering that Modric and Cruz are going to hand over the baton to the next generation of midfielders. And Jude Bellingham definitely being a part of the plan. Of course, Liverpool are also on the hunt for someone like a Jude Bellingham, but Real Madrid are also on the hunt. And one of the latest addition to that particular hunt is also Manchester City, because Bernardo Silva is also very unhappy at the club. That's not because of the number of minutes. That's primarily because of the reason that he and How Cancelo are good friends. And of course, when your best mate goes off the team, of course, you don't take that up pretty well. And of course, with Bernardo Silva, there's been a lot of lack of clarity in terms of whether he's going to start as a right winger, as a central midfielder, because with Riyad Mahrez's rise in form, Pep has been trying to prefer Riyad Mahrez as well on the right hand side. Now that has left Bernardo Silva not very happy, and also City are looking at pacey wingers. Now with pacey wingers, which means that City are also pretty much interested in signing someone like a Rafael Leao in the next summer as well. So that's where someone like Bernardo Silva's position in the team becomes even more vulnerable going ahead. So Bernardo Silva was linked on the final day with Barcelona as well. Now let's talk about Barcelona. Who did they sign? Barcelona was definitely linked with a lot of players, but for Barcelona, the major issue was registration of players, because they had a court battle against La Liga for financial fair play and to get enough wage cap, and which they won in the initial court hearing, through which they were able to register Gavi. And Barcelona were very much in for signing someone like a Sofian Amrabat. Amrabat had a fantastic World Cup with Morocco. If you all remember, he had one of the best World Cup as a centre defensive midfielder there. He was doing a lot of work for Moroccan team, who played very good defensive football in the World Cup. And Fiorentina rejected that particular bid. It was a loan move with an option to buy. So Barcelona did not really do a lot of business in the January transfer window as well. When it comes to Premier League clubs, of course, Chelsea won possibly the transfer window. But on the other side, for Liverpool, I have to mention Liverpool are still struggling to sign a midfielder. Hence, a lot of flack has been received to the FST group as well, because Liverpool really needed a midfielder, because Liverpool's midfield at this point of stage looks really jaded, because they are looking at a possible transition. Last season, remember, Liverpool competed for all the cups until the final day of the season. They were in it. They were in for all the competition. They won the FA and the Carabao Cup. They came to the final day of the Premier League. They went to the Champions League final, and of course, that particular run in the season has definitely taken a toll on most of the midfielders. Hence, they want a particular transition in terms of midfield, and also Fabinho's drop in form. Henderson possibly nearing the latter half of his career. Naby Keita not really stepping up has really put Liverpool in a lot of concern, and also Thiago having to do a lot of defensive and also attacking work rate has not really helped them as well. If you know, Thiago has been one of the bright prospects in midfield for Liverpool, and one could possibly say Liverpool is one Thiago injury away from having a much more disastrous season. So this is possibly the end of the transfer window from us. And of course, if we have to give one rating, of course, Chelsea has absolutely nailed it, because you have to talk about the major dealing ultimately. It is Enzo Fernandez move to Chelsea, because this happened in the final hours before the close of the transfer window. If you know the saga, this particularly went on for last 1 month. The moment Enzo Fernandez won the Golden Boy Award in the World Cup, Todd Boehly and Chelsea were extremely interested in him. First bid of Chelsea was rejected by Benfica, and of course Chelsea thought this might not be the window to sign Enzo Fernandez, but Chelsea identified a possible prospect in signing him at some stage, and they were totally in for it towards the latter days of the transfer window's closing. And in the last day, in the very final hours, Enzo Fernandez, and which means Rio Costa, really agreed to Chelsea that okay, we are fine with signing someone. You are fine letting go of someone like an Enzo Fernandez for a 120 million deal. Now that's a massive move to the Chelsea Football Club for Enzo Fernandez. You also saw Enzo being extremely keen to move to Chelsea, which also meant that he was not showing up to the training ground. He also shared a few bit of social media posts as well, where he was extremely keen to move to Chelsea. The Benfica fans are definitely not happy with that, but that also means it's a profit for River Plate. River Plate had a particular clause where they had to sign, where they had to share 20% of the particular transfer in terms of sellout clause, especially when you are trying to sell a player to another club from Benfica, and especially in Enzo's deal when they bought him from Liverpool, it had that it should be 20% of share of what you get from Enzo in a particular deal from Benfica to any other club. Which means River Plate also will be pretty happy with this deal, because River Plate will be getting 41 million from that particular deal with Chelsea Football Club of Benfica. Now, for Benfica, of course, they are eyeing on Varela from Argentina. He's another Argentinian defensive midfielder who's having a very good season with the Boca Juniors as well. So this is what Benfica looking at. Benfica are in contention for Champions League. They've had an extremely good run so far, and they will want to have a deep run or a fairy tale kind of a run in the Champions League, very similar to what Villarreal or Monaco has had in the previous seasons. Now, this is possibly it from us. We've almost covered almost every deal of this particular transfer window. It's been an extremely active transfer window for the liking, because when you talk about transfer windows and a January transfer window, you're looking at deals happening in a very quick succession, and deadline day is the most important day as well, because deadline day, as we mentioned, Enzo Fernandez deal happened. Hakim Ziyech was very close to moving to PSG, but it collapsed in the final hours as well. So this is all from us, and do remember to check out all our courses. The link is in the description. And also, if you like the video, do share and subscribe to the channel, because we can keep bringing you all these exciting content, detailed analysis on every recent update in the sporting world, on and off the field as well. Take care, all of you, and stay tuned for more.